We are joined tonight with a author and a motorcycle enthusiast, which is really fun. This is our first children's author in our series of children's stories. So really excited to get this kicked off here tonight with Sherri Kukla. Sherri, welcome to the show tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
All right, so Sherri, you have a awesome series. It's a 3-part children's series, if I'm not mistaken. You have The Skeleton and the Lantern, Ghost Lights of Drybrook, and The Christmas Miracle, all a part of the Children's Moto Mystery Series. Could you tell us a bit more about your wonderful series?
Yes, my husband has been a motorcycle enthusiast since he was a teenager. That's how we met, was him riding motorcycles and me watching him. And we've raised our kids to ride motorcycles. And when my kids were growing up and I would try to find books for them to read, I didn't really find very many that had the main characters riding motorcycles. So I decided I would write my own series that was like that. And so the kids are solving mysteries and riding dirt bikes while they're doing it.
That's really fun. As a kid who grew up around motorcycles, I would have loved for something like this. My dad rode and continues to ride vintage motorcycles through much of the last 60 years. So this is really, really neat for kids who grew up in the dirt or with the dirt as a part of our lives.
I hope so. And the setting is, we have the fictional town of Drybrook, but it's very similar to the real off-road community of Ocotillo Wells in San Diego County. And I've had many of the people that have read it and left reviews have talked about there are people that camp and ride out here and how exciting it is for them to be reading a story that's set in an environment that's so familiar to them. And then at the same time, I'm hoping that people that live in other parts of the United States and even the world get a look at a different kind of environment that they might not be familiar with. I was very surprised doing some research for the book to discover that in some locations, I don't know the states, but to me, anywhere that's not California is back east. So somewhere far, that they had no dirt to ride on, and they ride their dirt bikes on city streets. And I thought, wow, wouldn't those people be surprised to know there's thousands and thousands of acres in the desert to be able to ride on?
Yeah, that's that's a really good inspiration and gives kids who may not have that opportunity something to look forward to or something to seek and to find. And a big part of your stories is about seeking and pursuing your dreams. You want to talk a bit more about that marvelous theme?
Yes, that's been something that I saw modeled to me as I was growing up with my mom. She never really had much. She was always struggling financially, but she never let go of her dreams all her life. We lost her last summer, but up until Alzheimer's consumed her, she was pursuing dreams. And I just think that's a really important thing to encourage kids and adults to go for. Don't, even if someone's laughing about your dreams, and oftentimes people will, to just ignore that and go for it. And even if you don't reach the ultimate goal, you usually get somewhere farther than where you were when you started out. And I saw a quote one time that said something about I forget, something about shooting for the moon, and if you don't make it, you'll get to the stars or something like that. So I just think that that's a really good thing that we should pursue, and that's what the kids are doing in the book, and especially in book one. And they also find out that it isn't always easy. You're going to encounter obstacles, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to give up, or are you going to keep pursuing it, so that you can hit the goal?
I really appreciate that you do that. So many times we see these stories where everything just kind of falls into the laps of the main characters, but, having those challenges and seeing how they overcome them helps us to learn and grow as the readers as well, of no matter what age group you fall into. And that's really brilliant. Now, you mentioned about how sometimes we're going to encounter people who discourage our dreams or who laugh at us. And I wanted to talk to you a bit more about a critique experience that you had. In my other life, I am a podcaster with the semi-sages of the pages, and we just did a whole critique group session. So the good, the bad, and the ugly of giving critiques, and how you can give good advice as a critiquer and how you can receive advice as well, whether it's good or bad, as the person being critiqued. And I understand that you had one of those not so great experiences with critiquing. You want to talk a bit more about that?
Absolutely. I would like to say first, besides this bad experience, it was the first bad experience I had had with critiquing. When I lived in the city, for many years, I was a part of the San Diego Christian Writers Guild, and we would meet monthly. I mean, I'm talking, I think in the 70s and 80s, I was doing this. I would meet monthly with a group of, many of them were already professional writers, and we would critique each other's work. And I know one of the key things I learned there was never to defend my work when it's being critiqued, but to listen. And I got a lot of really good and valuable advice, and I never left there feeling discouraged or feeling like, well, I'm really not measuring up as a writer. I felt encouraged. But I had a situation when we moved to the desert 16 years ago, and that's when I had come up with the idea for the skeleton and the lantern. And I started working on it. I didn't have any kids in the home at that time. My granddaughter lives with us now, and she's a great live-in encourager, and giving me her input from a child's point of view. But at the time, she wasn't even born, and I started working on it. I would live too far away to go physically take part in a critique group, so I was searching online, and I found an online critique group, and I got matched up with a lady, and I sent her I think I had 3 or 4 chapters written, and the response she gave me, I don't remember it being encouraging at all. I don't remember specifically what she said. I just know I put the manuscript away and decided, I guess this isn't a project for me. But it wouldn't go away. It stayed in my mind all those years, that idea. And so about a year and a half ago, I just made it my New Year's goal that I'm going to pull that manuscript out and I'm going to finish it. When I started it, and I gave the first few chapters then to my granddaughter, and at the time I just had one main character. It was a boy, and she read it. She read the first few chapters. She liked the storyline. She liked the writing. I don't even remember what she said. She wanted more. And then I said to her, what if I add a second character, if I add a sister, and then we can change point of view from chapter to chapter, because I had seen that done in some other, manuscripts for this age. And she liked that idea, and so along came Millie. And it's funny because Millie has been some of the readers' favorite characters, and Millie didn't even exist in the beginning. So the difference between my granddaughter's input, and she didn't read it and say, this is perfect, don't do anything. She, in fact, one of the key things she told me, I was long about, probably 60 or 70 pages into my manuscript, and she said, when are we going to see the skeleton? You keep talking about this skeleton and we haven't seen it yet. So then I said, okay, let me go back and bring the skeleton in a little sooner than I planned on bringing the skeleton in. And she was encouraging about it. So when we are critiquing people, there's definitely a way to do it that's encouraging, and there's a way to do it that's negative and make someone feel like you're not cut out to be a writer. What do you think you're doing? So.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal advice. And you said some really great things in there about when you're putting your work out there to be critiqued, the important part is to listen. And, it's so easy for us to put up our walls, be like, no, it's perfect. I worked so hard on this. And even if you don't think it's perfect, just that, you pour your heart and soul into your writing. And so it's easy to put up those walls. But when you're putting your work forward, you want to have that open mind and open eyes and open heart, because the people who are critiquing you are generally trying to help and offer advice. And of course, you can always take or leave the advice. But it's also important, as you said, to find, or as you were sort of indicating, finding the right critiquer for the project. And, I'm a huge believer in, if you're writing a children's book, take it to a child, take it to that age group, because they're your audience. You can get the thumbs up from the child or those wonderful suggestions, that's going to help to carry your story on and into the next level.
Yes, I agree. And I know one of the things that they had explained to me when I was new in this group is that one of the reasons we don't want to respond is if we have to explain our work, then it didn't explain itself in the writing. And like they told me, you're not going to be sitting next to every reader being able to explain to them, well, what you really meant by this passage. And so I think a lot of times too, we know our own work so well, we know what we mean, and it is good to get another input, because if the other people don't understand, then we know we didn't explain it correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in the process of rebooting a novel that I've been working on for 12 years at this point. And I had it published, but it wasn't being received as well. And it's because I had very poor advice, which was go the complete independent route. And I didn't have the feedback from critiquers. I didn't have as wide a perspective, or not as wide a perspective, but as specific a perspective for the book I was working on. I didn't go to beta readers of my genre. And so I got the, oh, it's great, but it wasn't. And so yeah, I've gone now through several rounds of different critiques and beta readers, and it's incredible how far the book has come. And I've had this story in my head for 12 years, so oh my gosh, do I know it inside and out. So having those extra eyes, like you said, really helps to point out those inconsistencies, or the wait, he was just standing a second ago. How is he across the room sitting? When did this happen?
Exactly, exactly. And my husband, he is my second critiquer and the most harsh. He's very honest. With the benefit to that is when he says he likes something, he's not just trying to make you feel good, because by everything he said before, that sure wasn't making me feel good. But he's honest politely. But one of the things that he would point out in my book is that when I would have the kids out riding, I personally don't ride. I learned how at one point, but I was not good at it, and I don't like falling. I don't like getting hurt. So I don't ride. So all of my riding scenes, I had to have him read. At first, we were only going to have him read the riding scenes because he's never read a children's novel as an adult. And I was really surprised after he read the riding scenes, he offered to read my motorcycle riding is what I'm talking about, those scenes. He offered to read the whole book. But one of the things he would kind of get a laugh out of is when I'm talking about them riding, and then I would say, they went off of a 2-foot jump, and then he goes, really, Sherri, did they have their tape measure out there and they stopped and measured and they knew it was 2 feet? He goes, you don't have to say it like that. And so it's been good. He's given me the perspective of, making it authentic. Because I told him, I want the riding scenes, or there's a car chase scene in one of them, and they are off-roading in this chase. And I told him I want them to sound authentic, that even though I'm not the one that goes out and does that, I want to make it sound like I wrote it like someone who really would do it. And so he's been really helpful with that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, having a voice to help guide you that's an authority on the specific subject is a great way to write those scenes, because as writers we can't do it all. We'd love to, but it's fantastic to be able to have someone that you can talk to, and having those conversations really help to open your eyes as a writer to the experiences.
I agree. And one of the things I've encountered, I'm working on book 3. It's book 3 of the series. Even though I do have 3 books out, I don't call the Christmas Miracle a numbered part of the series, because it was just a 60-page mini mystery. It was published for free at Christmas time. People could read it. They still can. They can get it on Kindle for free. And it was like a gift to my readers and my reviewers of book 1. But while I'm working on the official book 3, I'm really struggling with it, because like you were talking, you had your book in your head for 12 years and I had mine in my head for, I think, 14 or 15 before I started. I haven't had book 3 in my head all this time. All I've had is the title. And I found that I sit down at the computer and I go, well, now what's going to happen? And where is the story going? And I was really struggling with that. And then we took our granddaughter and some friends to the beach a few weeks ago. And so I got to get going on this thing. I've been promoting that it will be out in fall. And so I had a little notepad with me, and it was pretty awesome. I was able to kind of map out the whole story of what was going to happen just while we were sitting there at the beach. So then I felt encouraged to come home. And now I know where I'm going with this, and I've got some specific ideas. And then I don't know if you've encountered this. I've heard other authors talk about it in writers conferences I've been at. I've done a lot of online writers conferences in the last year and a half, where I'll start writing and it's almost like the story is forming itself. Things start happening that I didn't even know I was going that way. And it amazes me. And so sometimes I think, well, I don't know where I'm going, but if I can just start writing. And in book 3, I sat down. I didn't even have one sentence out. I felt like Snoopy. I shared this Snoopy cartoon on my Moto Mysteries Facebook page recently, where he sits down and it says something like page 1, chapter 1, line 1. And then he goes, well, that's a good start for today. And that's about as we were having a big windstorm in the desert, which is quite often. And my husband was looking out the window at it and so frustrated by it because a lot of his work is outdoors. And so I thought, okay, book 3 is going to start with a windstorm in the desert because that's what I see looking out my window right now. And then from there, it's like a storyline just started forming. And then once I was able to spend some time at the beach just thinking about it, like I said, I got kind of a roadmap. And that's the first time I wrote out a kind of a summary of what I thought was going to happen in the whole book. Book 1 flowed real easily. The storyline, I mean, you have to go back and edit it so much to make it readable. And book 2 came along pretty quickly too, because I had that idea in my mind. But book 3 has been the struggle. But I feel pretty good about it now. I'm probably about 25 pages into it. I'm not sure how many pages it's going to be. The other ones, they've run right about 200 pages. And I do very short chapters. So I have like 80 chapters in each book, but the kids can just read the chapters really quick. I didn't do it for the kids. I did it for myself. I told myself I had to write 1 chapter a night.
That's a great goal, and I think it translates well into the genre, though, and to the age group.
I think so. I had a middle school teacher that she's retired and she runs a store down here in the desert. And she offered to critique it. That was a little bit scary because she told me that she's got thousands of middle school books. And I go, okay, here it is. And I just kind of held my breath. But she gave me really favorable feedback. And that's one of the things she pointed out, the short chapter, especially for reluctant readers that don't want to read. That's not overwhelming to them to see a chapter that's a page and a half or maybe 2 pages, and they can just read it quickly. And then all my chapters generally end in cliffhangers. So even though you got through that chapter, hopefully you want to keep going to find out what's happening.
That's great because then that hooks them, yeah, like you said, to keep going. And those smaller chapters are great milestones for, like you said, people are individuals who have a hard time reading. And I recently saw about how comics are so engaging for children because each page keeps them going. Each page is kind of like its own chapter, and each page has to end with a hook to keep you turning. And it's the same way with us traditionally written stories, is that if you don't have something that makes you want to keep going, you're going to put the book down. So that's really great. Sherri, let's just aside, this has been really good. You're giving so much wonderful feedback for writers. And a big part of this channel is that I want to give writers any sort of advice or tips from these interviews, because so many of us have been wondering, oh God, what do? I have this idea. Where do I go? I have this overactive imagination. How do I channel it to the page? So if there's any final advice you'd like to impart on our fellow authors, or if you're an aspiring author, you're an author, if there's any advice you'd like to share with them, or any final advice you'd like to share with them.
Yes, I would say get as much training as you can, and there's so much of it out there online right now. I was a member for about a year and a half of the Jerry Jenkins Writers Guild, and it's an online guild. You can do Q&As with him, and he'll respond. And he's a New York Times best-selling author, and he has lots of really good classes. So I did that for about a year and a half. It was $45 a month to do that. Then I was doing some other things with my business, and I needed to direct that money somewhere else. So I stopped with him, but there's still a lot of online courses that you can take. I'm right now taking one that's $15 a month, and it's by Chris Fabry, who he's a Christian author, and he's won quite a few awards too. And his is just titled, Hey, You Can Write. And he's really about encouraging new authors. And he has real short videos. They're just more like 5 minutes at a time, and you can get a lot of good feedback on there. So I would say keep training, and get as much training as you can. And then the most encouraging thing to me, because of course, especially as an indie publisher, your numbers, I keep looking at the sales numbers, and well, I'm a little bit discouraged. They're not what I was hoping that they would be. I wanted to sell 10,000 copies, and how come, I've sold maybe 500 or something or less. And so I read an interview with an author. I wasn't familiar with this author. His name is Hugh Howey. He's a science fiction writer, and it says that he's a New York Times bestseller also. And I don't know when he wrote this quote. He's in his 40s now, so I don't know if he was in his 30s. But he said, a few tricks that helped me. I planned from the outset to languish in obscurity for 10 years before I assessed my progress. This gave me patience. That was a big encouragement to me because, I published my first one in October of last year, and I feel like, well, wasn't I supposed to really have arrived by now? And I can realize that I don't have to. I don't even have to arrive by next year or the year after that. Now, I'm in my 60s, so I hope something happens before 10 years. But if not, I would just say don't give up and keep learning what you can and persevere, and be patient. Don't just assume the way things are in the beginning is how it's always going to be.
That is wonderful advice. And, I absolutely pass it on to all of our viewers for anything that you may be pursuing, whether it's writing or drawing, graphic arts, or being a mechanic on motorcycles. Pursue those dreams and don't let anything get you down. Thank you so much for this. This has been absolutely phenomenal. And to you viewers, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can be in the know on all of our awesome author interviews, writing tips, and book reviews as they come out. Again, Sherri, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.